Welcome to the Intentional Man Podcast, a podcast that inspires and equips men to lead lives of intentionality and grow to their full potential. I'm your host, Jonathan McGinley, a life coach that helps men just like you create the life that you want and live a story of significance through my coaching and tools on intentionality. Thanks for joining and welcome to the show. All right. Well, welcome to the Intentional Man Podcast. I am super excited for this episode. It is a topic I love to talk about. And I got my guest, Matt Preston, on here. Matt, how we doing?
Good. Hey, Jonathan. It's good to be on here.
Yeah, thanks so much for taking the time to be a part of the show. And so Matt is the owner of Colorado Nutrition, and they are a nutrition coaching business in Northern Colorado and have worked with many clients, helping them reach their nutrition goals. They do it through a very practical but also scientific based approach, and really just work with people to help them achieve their goals that they're looking for in nutrition. So I'm excited because he's going to bring a lot of wisdom and a lot of good practical advice that we can really kind of apply from here. So I kind of want to jump right into it. So we're talking about being intentional with our nutrition and our diet. I think a lot of times that's something that we as men can put on the back burner, right? When life gets busy, that's one of the first things that goes. So Matt, when you think of just being intentional with your diet, with your nutrition, what does that mean to you? What are kind of the first things you think of?
When I think of like intentionality within nutrition is kind of being more prepared. I think that's part of what makes nutrition so difficult for all of us, including myself. As we were talking a little bit before this, that it's the first thing that gets dropped. We have a meeting, maybe still in school, whatever it might be, that stress, that anxiety, something comes in, and we can always push off the next meal. Like maybe we're hungry, but someone, puts a meeting on our calendar without us even, being able to say, hey, yeah, I have time for that. And not putting ourselves first. A lot of times just trying to, we just work hard. So those meals, maybe those snacks or something like that, that fuel gets thrown aside. And we just kind of carry on until we can't anymore. We're too hungry and all sorts of stuff. And then we tend to, then we're at home and then we start snacking like crazy and stuff like that. So really being intentional with laying out our day. We do so many things to prepare for our day. We take a shower in the morning. We look good. We get the haircuts. We can do the workouts and stuff like that maybe in the morning. But we forget to fuel our bodies. So many times, we'll spend hours a week, making sure we get our workout in. Like, wait, I can't do that. I got to get my workout in. But we're not taking that time for our nutrition to prepare for our day as if we were going off to war or something like that. And that's kind of what the day is. A lot of times we're going out to succeed. We're going out to war, and we're not fueling that. It'd be like getting in the car and going on a family vacation or something like that and going, man, I don't think we need to fill up. I don't know, but we usually fill up on the way out of town so we can get as far as we can before we have to fill up again. So it's being intentional about just at least maybe the mornings, maybe the evening before, of making sure that we get those meals prepared and we're ready to hit the day. So
Absolutely. Well, and I think that's something that we talk about often on this show is, intentionality is really, a lot of it comes down to preparation, right?
Yeah.
Like if you don't prepare, if you're not thinking about what you're going to eat, if you're, then all of a sudden you're reacting to what's happening throughout the day. And I know for me, a lot of times, like especially in the morning, you get up, you hop out of bed, maybe you probably stay in bed as long as possible, hitting the snooze button, hop in the shower, and then all of a sudden you're on the go and you don't eat anything. You don't have anything packed or planned. So I think that's, big thing when you prepare your food ahead of time, like you said, it just empowers you.
It's a lot of the anxiety away from your day. When we're having to worry about, oh my gosh, I'm starting to get really hungry or whatever it might be. And then maybe you're working in an office or, maybe they bring in lunch or going out, and then you're making different decisions because you didn't prepare. That's where with my clients, I'm always asking, like how they're preparing for their next day. Because if they leave it kind of to chance, it's going to be harder and they're going to have more anxiety and stress around nutrition. That's the last thing I wanted to have. We want to take that anxiety and stress away from it. And by being able to prepare, maybe it's the night
Mm.
before. I mean, there's lots of different ways to prepare, whatever you're eating nutritionally, kind of meal prepping. Some will do kind of like the Sunday thing and just, go to town on Sunday afternoon and prepare everything and put it in little Rubbermaids and all in containers and all
Right,
sorts of
right.
stuff. Some do it the night before, some do like a Sunday, Wednesday thing. It's all over the place, but everyone's got to find their own niche so that they feel confident and they're taking that stress away from nutrition.
Mm.
Because if you have it made, you're going to eat it. Instead of
Right.
being hungry and then there's the little Snickers bar at the receptionist desk or whatever that they're going to hit
Yeah.
up, and then they're going to be like, man, I got busy again, so I'm going to go get another little Snickers bar just to pick me up, or just loads of caffeine, the energy drinks, the coffees, and the 5 o'clock, the 4 o'clock coffees and stuff like that. That's one of the biggest things that right away let me know that someone's underfueling their body is when they're having to reach for caffeine in the afternoon. Morning's fine. I mean, that just makes sense. Kind of a jolt and get going. But that afternoon energy drink or coffee usually is a great indicator that they're not preparing well for their day, or they're not eating well enough throughout the day. And they're having to lean on kind of more artificial energy. So,
Yeah. That's very interesting. Well, and it struck me when you said that it takes away the anxiety of the
yeah.
day. Because I think a lot of times people think, man, meal prepping or, thinking of this or planning the night before, that's just so much work. It's so much extra. But
Mhm.
uh, you're kind of saying that actually ends up allowing you to go into the day with confidence, is what you mentioned. It takes away the anxiety, because if you don't know where your next meal's coming from or whatever, then you're stressing out about, okay, now
You're
I got to go
stressing out
find
about
this.
it.
And yeah,
You
so I think that's interesting. It's a
Yeah, spending
good,
$30 on DoorDash or whatever because you
right,
forgot to
right.
pack your lunch. And it doesn't have to be hard. A lot of times we'll just do leftovers. You take dinner,
Hmm.
and we make extra of it, and then we take it for the next day. So it's kind of that two birds with one stone. It's where you're getting two meals for basically the time of one. And then you're kind of thinking about snacks and getting breakfast made and stuff like that. But it doesn't have to be this all-consuming thing to where your entire life revolves necessarily around your food. You just got to make time for it. You got to make a little bit of time for it, and it's worth it. It's so worth it.
That's so good.
So
Yeah, and I think that's perfect for what we're talking about today of, hey, are we thinking through this? Are we taking a little bit of time to be intentional with our nutrition? Because
yeah,
that's so often, just kind of in the back burner. We're thinking about work, we're thinking about family, we're thinking about all the obligations. And
hmm
but then, if you don't plan or prepare, you kind of got this underlying stress of, shoot, I didn't pack my food. And so
right.
I love what you're saying there. This is why intentionality in this area is so important. And that's why we're diving in today. So, Matt, I would love to get into some just kind of practical things. I think there's so much noise out there in this arena,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
In the nutrition, there's so many, tips and things that we see, and they all seem to be contradicting themselves. So
yeah.
that's why I'm excited to have you on the show to be able to bring a little clarity to us, maybe simplify some things um, where the listeners can kind of know exactly how to game plan. So let's just jump into, what are some of the common myths that you hear with nutrition?
Over all these years, there's just so many of them.
There's a lot of them.
Whether it's don't eat carbs, don't eat fats. I mean, that was the 90s. Kind of had this dichotomy between the 90s and the new millennium. In the 90s, it was all no fat, so we had no fat hot dogs and no fat breads and all sorts of. Now we have no carb everything. So there's
Right.
always trying to find these kind of loopholes, and there's no loopholes in nutrition. It comes down to three things that I'll always believe in, and I've taught for years, and that's that your calories are number one, your macronutrients are number two, and then your timing is number three. We
Mm.
have what's called the first law of thermodynamics. I don't want to get too sciencey on everyone, but the first law of thermodynamics basically states you cannot create or destroy energy. So what that what that means is, if we want to lose, so a lot of my discussion tends to be around weight loss, right? A lot of weight
Right.
gain, football players and stuff like that. But for the most part, most nutritionally, the diets and the gimmicks tend to focus around weight loss. So we'll kind of engineer it around there when I'm talking about that. But when we get so lost in the weeds of, oh, we must be missing something, like, oh, I'm not losing weight because I'm eating carbs, or I'm eating after 6 o'clock. I'm like, take it back. That's way too complicated. Take it back to your first law of thermodynamics, which has never changed. It never will change. You can't just create something out of thin air. So if you want to lose weight, you have to eat less calories than you're expending. It would be
Mm.
just as if you went to the gas station with a full tank. There's no reason to go to that gas tank. You have a full tank. It's kind of the same way in reverse when we go to lose. We have to be in a deficit. And to continually make this first point clear, let's talk about weight gain. Let's say that some of the listeners out there, maybe they're trying to build, or maybe for like me that have kids or something like that. Say I had a high school football player. He's a middle school. He just went out for football, and he was little. And he comes to mom and dad and he says, "Hey, I've got to gain weight. What do I do? What do I do?" 99.9% of parents would say, "Well, you got to start eating more." That makes sense, right? I mean, that makes sense for dang near everybody. Is if you want to gain weight, you have to eat more. Well, it doesn't
Right.
change when we go to lose. It doesn't mean we have to eat less food. We have to eat less calories, and that's a whole nother discussion that we can go through. We have to be in an energy deficit in order for the body to look inside and then pull that energy from within. So that's
Mhm.
number one. So when we get away from that, we really start to lose sight, and we see all these kind of gimmicks out there that are trying to do that, right? So if you took, say, like the keto diet, and you took a normal eating pattern, your breakfast, lunch, dinner, you're seeing carbs in it, and your neighbor says, "Hey, let's do this keto thing." It's kind of those one rule diets. And all of a sudden you lose all your carbohydrates. Now, if you kept that, yeah, you'd probably lose some weight, because you eliminated some calories. It's just as if
Mm.
when we all get sick, we tend to lose weight. We stop eating as many calories and our weight comes down. The problem within keto is you're also getting a lot of extra fats, and it's not going to ever break that first rule, that first law of thermodynamics. And you can take it to the extremes, and that's what I beg everyone to do when it comes to these gimmicks, these
Yeah.
tips, these tricks, these new diets. Who knows what'll come out the first of this next year? There's always something new. Is
Always.
take it to an extreme. See if it breaks that first law. Well, you take keto and you can try it. Have 4 ribeyes every day for a week. See if you're going to lose any weight. You're basically taking in around 10,000 calories. I don't know anybody that burns more than 10,000 calories. I think Michael Phelps did back 20 years ago during the Olympics, during training. So if calories aren't there, if they're not part of the equation, then we kind of get lost. And I know some of the questions kind of gear around, do I have to count calories? And we'll talk about that in a bit.
Mhm.
But calories have to be number one. So if something is not inherently in creating an energy deficit, meaning you're eating less calories than you're expending, then it's kind of lost the mark. It can't just be the one rule diets of don't eat carbs, because you can overdo your calories. You can have 5 ribeyes and
Mhm.
smother everything in bacon and avocado and stuff like that. Those are really high calorie foods. It's going to be very hard to lose weight, even though you're
Right.
adhering to the no carb thing. Or maybe it's intermittent fasting where you don't eat till 1 o'clock. You take that to that extreme as well and go, okay, well, does that mean I get to go to McDonald's for lunch and dinner and have 3,000 calories each meal? No, you can't. You're not going to lose any weight doing that, because you just took in 6,000 calories, and most
Yep.
likely you're burning around 2,000 to 2,500. So getting away from the gimmicks that aren't talking about that individual. So that's a
Yes.
long-worded question answer there.
Well, this is a big one. This is a big one because I think people have a general understanding of this a little bit of calories in versus calories out. We
Mm-hmm.
hear that, but then we hear all these other diets that are claiming these amazing results, and
Mm-hmm.
so I think understanding this topic is a big deal. So what you're saying is, if you want to lose weight and say you're burning 3,000 calories a day on average,
Yeah,
you have to come in under 3,000 calories a day in order to lose. So
exactly
that's
right.
in simple terms. And if you want to gain weight and you're burning 3,000, you got to go above
You
3,000
got to go
calories.
above it. You'll never get, and there's a reason why calories in, calories out it's been around since nutrition started, and it will be around forever. And
Uh-huh.
guys, people like me that have been doing this for so long, 15 years plus, they've been doing this. We're not jumping on the newest craze. We're not jumping on the no carb diet. And I'm not talking negatively about the no carb, because I'm sure there's
Hmm.
a lot of guys do it, and that's totally fine. We can get into that if we want to. It's not that it's inherently bad at all. It's just understand that it's not magic. There's no magic in
Right.
nutrition. It's literally science. The body is running off of calories. It's running out of energy, just like your car is running off gas. So we can't get around it. So understanding why it's working or not working. So if
Right.
guys, doing the keto thing, go, man, I don't know. My neighbor was doing really well. I tried it. It's not working for me. Well, if it's not working, it's because you're eating too many calories.
Hmm.
Period.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, that's really good. And I think that's a good thing to understand. You're not saying that those diets are necessarily bad or you can't lose weight. You're just saying that's something you have to be aware of, because keto could
Yeah,
have worked for somebody when they were, that the keto diet forced them to eat less than maybe they were. So then they started losing weight. Where then somebody who went keto, they could have just replaced calories from carbs with
they
calories from
absolutely
fat.
could.
And then all of a sudden they're not losing any
Yeah,
weight.
that's
So,
why like in the '90s when, like we were talking earlier, when everything went no fat, it didn't work out so well because they just started adding more fats to foods.
which
So the
has a lot of
calories
calories.
you just
Right.
added. It was just about the calories. It'd be like, um, let's put a scenario together. What if like you had your neighbor? So I just keep using this neighbor scenario. Say he was like 300 pounds, and you both did the keto diet, and you
Hmm.
literally ate the same thing. I guarantee if you ate the same amount as him, as this 300-pound, linebacker or something like that, you two ate the same foods, the same amounts. I bet he could lose some weight where you wouldn't, because you're eating the same calories, and he's eating a lot more calories than you need. So that
Right.
same no carb thing might work for him, but might not work for you, because if you're eating the same amount and he's 300 pounds, he's eating
Hmm.
a lot more calories than you need.
Right.
It's
No, this is
still
a very,
300 calories.
that's a very good point. That's a very good point, because it's easy to look at somebody who is successful or is losing weight and try to just mimic exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, they have a whole
But
different
each,
life, different everything. That's what I
exactly,
specialize in,
exactly.
the individuality of that person. Yeah.
So yeah, can you tell us just quickly? So what are some of the factors that go into, so per individual? What are some of the factors that go into how many calories you're burning in a
Yeah.
day?
Yeah. So it's based on an equation. It's called TDEE, or total daily energy expenditure. You start with your basal metabolic rate, or BMR, which is basically the base rate, the minimal amount of calories your body needs to live in a vegetative state. So picture yourself, you're not blinking an eye, you're not rolling around. This is not watching Netflix in bed or reading a book. This is literally coma state for 24 straight hours. You can get that a couple ways. There's lots of different ways to get it. You can ask Google, what my BMR is, and it'll ask basically your height, weight, and gender. It's a decent way to do it, but not the best. We use an
Right.
in-body body composition analysis machine that determines what your muscle is. It's one of the most accurate ways to do it, is to gauge your basal metabolic rate, with part of that algorithm being your muscle mass, because your muscle is like your engine. The bigger that engine gets, the more energy it tends to want to expend. So you have two
Hmm.
guys with 200 pounds at 6 foot flat. One has a high percent body fat, meaning they have a low muscle mass, and then the other one conversely. That one with a higher muscle mass, that lower percent body fat, is going to have a higher basal metabolic rate because they have more muscle. Another way
Right.
to do it,
Makes
and probably
sense.
the most accurate way, is what's called an RMR. It's a gas exchange thing that we use. That can also be used. But basically, you're getting your base rate if you were in a coma. So that's just you without moving. Then we got to start factoring in other things like your activity, which tends to be, like how many steps do you take in a day? What's your work life like? Do you sit at a desk all day, or are you running around after kids or something like that? Then we have your actual exercise calories. So that's number three. So you can get those things off of Fitbits and watches, and they can be a pretty decent job of determining ballpark kind of what you're burning. So
Hmm.
just go back over this: you have your basal metabolic rate, your activity index, exercise calories, and then the fourth one that most don't know about is what's called TEF, or thermic effective food. Your body actually burns calories by digesting and absorbing calories. So
Hmm.
that's a part of it as well, and that actually has a lot to do with what you eat. The higher protein that you take in, the more calories you're going to burn by digesting and absorbing. Where like fats are very low in their thermic effective foods. That's where we see these high fat nutrition plans or diets or whatever. This has nothing to do with whether they're succeeding or not, but they're burning very few calories by eating. So if we kind of take an example of this, if you took in 100 calories of protein, you would burn about 25 to 30 of those calories just digesting and absorbing that protein. Carbs are like 10 to 13%, and then fats are like 3. So fats on the lower end of it. So that's where those high fat plants, they're not burning very many calories by eating. So they're not taking full advantage of their thermic effective food. But it's basically your calories out are basically a 4-part equation is all it is. Yeah.
Hmm. Yep, that
Yeah.
makes sense. And I love what you mentioned with the height and the weight and the age and the, percentage of body fat. All those things factor in. So you
They
could
all
have,
factor in. They
they all
absolutely
factor in. So a 200-pound guy that's got a ton of muscle versus a 200 pound guy that has a high percentage of body fat. Those are going to be different in terms of their
Massively.
calorie needs, massively
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. Not
So I
only in
think
their
that's super
base weight, but
important.
then, most likely the guy that has a bunch of muscle at 200 pounds is, working out, staying active, probably eating a higher protein diet. So everything we just talked about, he's burning more
Mm-hmm.
calories throughout the day than the other, his counterpart there at a higher percent body fat would be just across the board. Yeah.
Right. Yep. That's good. That's good. Well, let's talk real quick. So with calories in, calories out, if I was looking to lose some weight, um, how long, because there's so many advertisements out there saying, hey, lose 20 pounds in 3 weeks and,
Yeah.
all these things, 60 days to a six pack, can you kind of tell us what you can expect if you start saying, okay, I know I burn about 3,000 a day, so I'm going to be eating, 2,500 or something, be at a
Yeah.
deficit. How
Mhm.
long would it take in order for me to lose some weight? What are we looking there?
I'd like to see about now. We have to just kind of define weight versus fat.
Sure.
Weight
Sure.
loss. You lose a lot of water weight. Like if you came to me and said, "Hey, I got to weigh 5 pounds less by this time tomorrow," I said, "No problem, no problem. We're gonna kick out all your carbs, so that you're losing a bunch of glycogen, water, and glucose. You're not gonna drink any water. Let's put you on some diuretics. We can pull 5 pounds over there." But that is just
Right.
water. Real weight loss is fat.
Hmm.
So I like to see about a pound to a pound and a half per week with my clients. That's over 52 pounds in a year. I think it's like 52 to 70 something in a year. That is a massively different body for anybody. And I believe anything that's faster than that, kind of getting into the 80s and 90s, depending on how much they're weighing and stuff. So it's all case dependent, is too
Hmm.
fast. Too fast is too fast. Those that lose rapidly tend to put it back on. The research will has always
Hmm.
supported that and most likely will always support that because the more someone loses, like what I have an example. A client the other day sent me this picture of this book that his wife's reading, and it says lose 20 pounds in 10 days.
Oh
I said,
boy.
okay, let's dive into this. If you were to lose 20 pounds of real weight of fat, what would that require? Is it possible? Well, when I calculated it, it basically meant that they would have to burn 7,000 calories a day and not eat 1 calorie for 10 days. I don't know anybody that could burn 7,000 calories, basically live in the gym, live on a treadmill, whatever. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know. I've never burned 7,000 calories in a day, I don't think, unless it's some big hike. I don't know. But
No.
even that, like go for a big hike up a 14 or something like that, or spend the day in your backyard, just working your tail off and tell me that you're not going to be starving after one day. Now do that for 10 straight days. Because that's what it would take. You'd have to burn 7,000 calories for 10 straight days and not take in 1 calorie to be able to legitimately lose 20 pounds of fat in 10 days. It's
Yeah.
just crazy out there. So it's like, okay, well, what if someone did that? What about if they literally said, I lost 20 pounds in 10 days and they had the skill to prove it? Well, I guarantee you a lot of that's water. It just
With
has to
water.
be. Each
Right.
pound of fat equals about 3,500 calories. In order to get that pound of fat out of your body, you have to be in that deficit of 3,500 calories. Maybe that's in a week. So that's where you were talking about 3,000 calories. So I take in 2,500, that's 500 calorie deficit. That's basically about a pound of fat loss in a week if your body
Right.
leans solely on its fat mass for that 3,500 calories. That's where we get when those deficits get really big and you see someone lose a lot of weight real quickly, which, hey, I'm going to throw the biggest party for them. I think that's fantastic that they're doing something to lose the weight. When it's like kind of off the charts, then I get a little worried because it just means that their deficit is really, really big. They're
Hmm.
working out 2 or 3 times a day or 2 or 3 times, 2 or 3 hours in a day. And, they're skimping on meals and they're, doing things that maybe they shouldn't be doing and not really treating their body the way they should. Maybe they're getting the weight loss, but is there going to be a repercussion? So
Right.
that's what
Right.
I worry about when we see those big, really quick
Yes.
weight losses and stuff like
Which
that.
yeah, exactly. And I think that's actually a really good point. Because I think a lot of people kind of understand this calories in versus calories out. So
Yeah.
they go, okay, if I just stop eating or barely
Yeah.
eat at all, or limit myself to 1,000 calories a day or 1,500 or something, then I'm going to lose the weight fast. What are
Mhm.
some of the repercussions
Yeah.
or concerns that you would have going in that big of a deficit
Yeah.
compared to just, playing the patient game and going a little more,
Yeah,
500?
that's a great question, Nathan. Probably the biggest I see is kind of that yo-yo, that high-low game. To where
Mm,
one day it's like I'm so tired of being this weight, so I'm just going to stop eating, kind of the mentality. And that thought tends to happen right after having lunch or something like that. Give it a couple more hours and then determine whether you're just going to not eat anymore for a day or so. But it tends to then just get this cycle going of low, high, low, high, low, high, to where their calories are really low for a day, and then they splurge. So they're developing a real poor relationship with their food. That's a big one that I really do worry about. Then someone can kind of tell if they're under eating. They tend to have, cravings in the afternoon, low energy, sleep's poor, recovery's poor. Everything kind of starts to drop down because they're running on empty. So those are the things that I really look for when I'm meeting with an initial client or something like that. Is what's your energy like? I mean, I ask you all the time, what's your energy like in the afternoon? What kind of cravings are you having in that late afternoon, evening? And it literally tells me right there what's going on that we need to address.
Right. Yeah. Yep. That's very interesting. So, and a lot of times that's, it's almost opposite of what you think, because you even mentioned in there, hey, maybe you need to eat some more carbs in the morning so you curb, because I think people try to not eat very much, and then that's where the binging comes in, because they're,
they just start
everything's low, and
mm-hmm.
You start backloading at the end of the day, and that's when it's hard with the craving and everything. So, and that's why, our original talk about being intentional is you're packing some food, throughout the day, you're packing some snacks, you're preparing, you're thinking ahead of time so that you actually are properly fueling your body throughout an entire day, instead of getting to the end of the day and then
you're eventually going to have to fill up. You might as well keep up with it instead of wait until it's your gas tank's running dry and you're pushing your car into the gas station.
Exactly.
Well, and I kind of relate this. I relate a lot to cars and engines and stuff like that. It's not because I'm a meathead or anything like that, but because it makes sense. Most have a car or some kind of engine that they know. Maybe it's their lawnmower. I don't know. We relate a lot to it. It'd be like if you got in your car or your truck and ran it up and down the interstate at 80 miles an hour, you're going to have to fill up about every 3 to 4 hours. The body's very, very similar, except for it doesn't have only one energy reserve. Our bodies have lots of different energy reserves. Like I mentioned, it has glycogen. Your muscle is an energy resource, your blood sugar, and then obviously your fat mass. So if your body's running low, it can it's not like your car where once that gas tank drops, you're done. You're not filling it up with antifreeze or oil and continuing on the interstate. You've got to pull over and fill up. So our bodies are relatively similar to perform efficiently. I really do believe in snacks, kind of bridging those gaps in between our main meals.
For sure.
That a lot of times helps take that pressure off those main meals like lunch and dinner a lot.
Thank you for tuning in to the Intentional Man podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you would like to support the show, please share it with others, post about it on social media, and leave a rating and review. If you are someone who is looking to take your life to the next level, accelerate your success, and live more intentionally, I would love to help. Shoot me a text at 970-430-6085, and we can schedule a time to meet to discuss your vision and your goals. Again, that is 970-430-6085. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, build a life that matters by living intentionally.